Welcome, this is part 2 of designing our arcade machine, and today we're going to focus on using computer-aided design to manufacture a speaker cover that will be used on our console. To put it into context, if we were to buy these parts in, we're talking around £28 each for a 2-inch speaker mesh for the quality that we're after. So we're going to try and manufacture one to the same spec from scratch using the software and the machinery that we have within the Academy. So this is TechSoft Design version 3, and our Year 9s currently do a project where they're creating a phone amplifier, and they also need speakers. So this will sort of link in with what we tend to do with some of the projects in Year 9. I won't be explaining everything to do with the software that we're using at the minute. It's just showing you really the process rather than a step-by-step instruction on how it's constructed. So we're going to start by working out the size that we need. So I'm going to click onto the circular, turn on to radius, and I know that really I want it at around 120 millimeters. So 120 millimeters diameter would mean the radius would be 60 millimeters, and I'll just click onto OK, and I click onto gridlock, and it will snap to the grid. At this point, I need to then make the circles or the perforations where the holes are going to allow the sound to come out of the machine. So to do that, I'm just going to double click onto the grid, and this time I'm going to change the X and the Y to 2, and that should set the grid to 2 millimeters, and then I'm just going to zoom in so I can see what we're doing a bit easier. So the next stage then is to draw the circles that we want to go through. Now I know that the circles will need to be about 3 millimeters, so the radius in this case will be 1.5 millimeters, and I'll just click onto OK, and I can just start to draw either inside or outside. So on this part, what I can do is just click and draw each one of the holes that we need for each part of the speaker. Now that's going to take some time, so there is a quick way of doing this, and the quick way is literally to select the one, click onto draw, transform, rectangular array. How many columns? We just want one column at the moment. Number of rows, we'll probably need around 30 just to start off with, and the spacing, because it's set at 2 millimeters on the grid, I'm just going to change that to 4 and click onto OK, and then what should have happened is it should have made me a line of circles that I can just move down into position from here. So let's just zoom back in just to make sure we've got what we need. Okay, so we find that sometimes it's going to cover and sometimes it's going to cut some of the lines, so I'll just see if I can move it up. There we go, and it's actually fitted perfectly into that line. Now what I shall do now is just copy that group by clicking that at the bottom, and this time I want to offset it slightly so it's actually not all in parallel. So I'll do exactly the same, copy those, and then once we've copied it, I'm just going to then place it right the way across this circle, and then we'll look at trimming on the trim commands. So again, this shouldn't take too long, so I'm just replicating each part as we go through. Now the laser cutter works very similar to how a printer would work, so it has an X and Y axis, but instead of just printing using ink, it actually uses light just to cut through the material. So I'm just going to copy that one. Copy this part on here and move it across. So ideally, when we send this to print, we need to just make sure that we've got every line that we need to be cut out that is in black, because black is what's identified by the CNC DXF file is what needs to be cut out. Anything that's red would be engraving. Now at this point I can delete any and just delete the bits that I don't want outside the circle, And then all I'm going to do then is when I get a bit nearer to the circle is change to fit, so it'll trim, but still keep the profile of the circle. So anything that's whole at the minute, I'm just going to delete these. Now I'm only drawing it on the one side because then I can copy it and flip the drawings onto the other side. So it's just a quicker way of doing it, and that's part of the advantage of using computer-aided design to normal drawings. If I'm doing engineering drawings and I make a mistake, then I have to redo the drawings and they're hard to modify. Using CAD, it allows us to make modifications very, very quickly, and also it allows us to zoom in and zoom out and all the other functions that we can't really do that well with a traditional drawing board. So at this point I'm just going to delete some of the lines. So just going to the outside, I'm just going to delete the ones that stick outside of the circle. Now I'm not going to delete the circle just yet, but what I should be able to do now is flip it from this point, because we know that that's the center. So now if I copy this element and copy, but then just flip it using this side, what I should be able to do is just move these circles back into place to fit on the other side. Okay, now some of the circles aren't quite where they need to be, so at this point what I may need to do is move some of these slightly outwards. So if I just undo what we've just done, try it again, and then make sure that we've got the snap and the grid where it needs to be. Still looks slightly out there, so let me turn the snap block off and just see if we can move it slightly. So these are all the functions that we could do that we can't necessarily do when we're drawing by hand. That's still not quite that. Okay, so just slightly down. There we go. So now I should be able to trim these just the same. So any line that's on the outside, I should be able to trim. So at this point, what I'm going to try and do is just delete any line that doesn't look as if it's circular. And if I need to zoom in again, I can. So anything that we don't want, we can always undo. But it's just a case of trimming in between these spaces here, and that's going to give us the idea that there's a circle part going through, even if they're just small holes of the impression. Now we're going to be cutting this out of acrylic, and we're going to try and use a colour that's going to blend in with the decals that we've got. So this bit is a little bit tricky, it does take time, but of course it's worth taking the time because we haven't got to worry about the time that we need to manufacture, because this will literally cut it out probably in about 2 or 3 minutes. Now this is really the same sort of process that would happen in industry. So a CAD designer would be cutting or making a drawing ready to cut for the machines to manufacture. And certainly with prototyping, it's easier to do it this way than to get all the tools and the machines set up to find that actually it doesn't look good or it doesn't work. So a good way of prototyping is by using CAD packages. So we're almost there. Alright, I'm just going to replace that one there because I actually think we should have some more circles. So I'm going to draw these in manually. We're not far off now. So the next stage would be then to refresh the drawing just to check what we've got. So I'll hit refresh, and that's not looking too bad, if I'm honest. It's looking okay. Right, so at this point what we'll do next is we need to click back onto our radius, and if we set it to 126, 126, so that would be 63 radius. Click onto OK, and if I can just find the center again, which is going to be with the gridlock, so it's going to be, I would have thought, around there. That line will engrave to make it look like it's actually a part of the design, so we're just going to change that line to red. And then the next line that we're going to draw, and we're going to put this at 67 radius. Click onto OK. Will be the line that we cut out. So again, we're just going to find the center, to draw that line out, and that then gives us another circle that will cut that out. Now of course we need to actually have some way of fixing this to basically the outside shell. So from there, all I'm going to do now is literally find the centers from here, draw me another circle, but this circle I'm going to do this by sight just to see what we've got from here. So I'm going to try and snap on to where the gridlock is, and even though it's not in the middle of one, that's fine, and I'm just going to click onto an outside rim from there. Now from this point of view, to try and get them equal around each side, all I'm going to do is now just click onto this one, go to draw, transform, circular array. We want them at 90 degrees. How many repeats? We would like 4 of them. Click onto OK, find the center again, and that should have put all of these into that position. So again, from that point, all I'm going to do now is just delete the lines that I don't need from here on in. So we don't need that part, that part, that part. Now I'm just going to trim these parts just to break the lines, and then I'm going to change it back to delete any, and then we should be able to just delete the parts in full. So just by clicking back onto there, if I click onto these parts, it should start to delete all the lines that I don't need. That one it might not because I haven't trimmed it properly, but that one's okay, that's fine. Back to the trim command. We don't need that line, don't need that line, don't need that line, and we don't need that line. Okay, so back to delineate and click just to delete those lines. So there may be 2 there. Brilliant. Okay, so the next stage is to put the screw hole in. So now we know what they're looking like from here. So this time I'm going to go back to radius. We'll have a 4mm hole this time to be countersunk. So that will be a radius of 2. So if I click onto OK, find the center, click onto that point, go to draw, transform, circular array. That's okay, it's still the same. We need to find the center, and it's actually put the holes on there ready for us to do it. So within 5-10 minutes we've managed to create a speaker housing that we can use onto our arcade machine, and that's ready to be laser cut. So the next stage will just show us how we laser cut that out. So to do it, we need to convert this file. So first of all, I'm just going to save the file, and we're going to save it as speaker. So arcade speaker 1. Save. Now that's saved it in this format, but the machines that we operate on need to have it converted to a different code. So we'll need to export it as a DXF file. So I'll just click onto Export File, RK Speaker 1 DXF file, click on to save. We're using ASCII as it's an American program. Click on to OK, and that's now ready for us to cut. So we're going to have all these circles cut out in the center, the screw holes cut out, and that's going to create a speaker cover similar to this, but at a fraction of the price.